Good morning and welcome to Football League World TV. We've got a very special show for you today. My name's Ned Holmes. I'm joined by my colleague Toby Wilding, and today we're going to be handing out our half-season awards for the Championship. How are you doing this morning, Toby?
Yeah, good, thanks. Looking forward to this. I mean, running through sort of the categories we've got here, there was some really tough calls to make, but I did enjoy looking over some of these players and what they've done in the Championship this season. So it should be really good to, sort of get really into sort of the mark and the impact they've made in the division over the sort of past few months.
Absolutely, it's been a fantastic year and a wide open one in England's second tier. Really, that playoff race still looks absolutely wide open, and with Fulham and Bournemouth slipping up this weekend, who knows what's going to happen for the top two places as well. There's been some fantastic performances up and down the division. From some brilliance at Derby all the way up right to the very top with Fulham. So as you say, it's not been easy to pick our awards, but hopefully we can justify them so any of the fans watching aren't too wound up. The categories today are best signing, breakthrough player, surprise package, and then best goalkeeper, best defender, best midfielder, best striker, and finally the Championship's best player at the half-season point. Before we get started, though, just a reminder, as always, to click like on the video, subscribe to Football League God TV on YouTube if you haven't already, and of course, to let us know your thoughts in the comments. Well, Toby, as I said, we'll start off with best signing, and I'll come to you first. Who have you gone for?
Yeah, I've gone for Joel Piroe at Swansea. I think he's had a huge impact for them since he came in the summer. I mean, obviously we saw Andre Ayew leave Swansea over the summer, and there was sort of huge questions over how they were going to fill his void in terms of goal scoring abilities. And it was Piroe who's really come in and done that for them. He sort of arrived from PSV for £1 million. So, there was maybe a few sort of questions of it. Is he going to be able to fill that void left by Ayew at such an early stage of his career when he's never really, sort of established himself in that sort of PSV side? But he stepped up brilliantly with Swansea, 11 goals, 4 assists. No player for Swansea has got more in either of those categories. So he's really hit the ground running there. And obviously, it's still been a bit of a tough start to the season for Swansea. They're only 16th in the table, which is below where they'd want to be. But I just do wonder sort of where they might be if they haven't brought him in on what is a bit of a bargain price, it seems.
Absolutely. Well, I'm staying in South Wales, but I've gone for Jamie Patterson as my best signing, and a number of factors here for me. I mean, on a personal level, he's a player I've watched a lot of at Bristol City over the years, and someone that I think everyone that followed the Championship always accepted, had a bit of magic about him and could create something out of nothing. But I guess struggled to produce that sparkle consistently and influence games as much as you always felt he should have. But obviously that's not really been a problem since his move to Swansea. Seems the perfect fit really for Russell Martin's sort of system. 8 goals and 4 assists in 22 games. He's fast on course to sort of his best seasons since stepping up from League One and that 2013-14 campaign at Forest. Add to the fact they signed him on a free transfer, and to me it just looks an absolutely phenomenal bit of business. I mean, looking around the league, as you say, Joel Piroe's another one. Harry Wilson, obviously a big money signing, and perhaps the signing that the rest of the league would have wanted to make. But for me, that impact and a player that seems so perfectly suited to Russell Martin's system and has helped really, I guess, make that transition for Martin since arriving at Swansea easier, and that's why I've gone for Jamie Patterson. Well, our next topic is, or our next award rather, is the breakthrough player of the season at the half-season point in the Championship. We've both opted for the same player, Toby. Why does Bournemouth's Jadon Anthony deserve the award for you?
Well, for starters, I was sort of looking for a player who has really only come onto the scene this season, even in terms of getting his first proper taste of football at any sort of EFL level, which is sort of what led me to Anthony in particular. I mean, he never even started an EFL game in any of the 3 divisions before this season, and now he's almost a mainstay for Bournemouth. He's featured in every league game for them this season, and he's made a real impact with 6 goals and 4 assists. So he's settled in immediately. He's played a big part, not just in a side holding their own in the Championship, but despite this recent poor run they're on, who are contending for automatic promotion. And he, as I say, he's played a significant part in that. And I think when you look at where he is playing out wide, you maybe thought with the departure of Arnaut Danjuma over the summer, whether that could be a sort of major blow for Bournemouth, and whether they might struggle to sort of replace him. But Anthony's come in that sort of wide area, and he's stepped up massively. And every credit to him, he's been really impressive.
Absolutely. I think for me, I looked at his Bournemouth teammate Jordan Zamora, and also Fulham playmaker sort of Fabio Carvalho were two that were certainly high on my list. But in the end, I think it was just really impossible to look past Jadon Anthony. As you said, like for the breakthrough player, he's really someone that sort of, for me personally, perhaps not for some dedicated Bournemouth fans, but came out of nowhere really. He was in that team early on, and you kind of expected him to fall out of it at some point, but that hasn't been the case. You look at some of the players that he's keeping on the bench, and the likes of Morgan Rogers and Jamal Lowe, and that says it all really. And as you say, losing a player like Danjuma, who's gone to La Liga, I think it is, and has really kicked on there. And yet, losing their key attacking player, and yet Bournemouth has still managed to sort of take another step forward this season. And I think Anthony deserves a huge amount of credit for that. So that's Bournemouth's Jadon Anthony as both of our breakthrough player at the half-season point. A reminder then, just before we crack onto the surprise package award, that we do want your thoughts. Any EFL fans watching, we want to know who would get your awards at the half-season point. Our next award then Toby, the surprise package. And given what we've seen over the past few months, we should perhaps call this the Brereton Diaz Award. I mean, 19 goals now in 23 games, only 3 back from Alexander Mitrovic, and on course to smash Ivan Toney's record for the most Championship goals if the Serbian doesn't get there first, of course. Why is Brereton Diaz, so a lot has been said about him, Toby, and you're a player that's watched Blackburn a lot over the last few years. But why for you is he the surprise package?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, it was a much improved season for Ben Brereton as he was back then last year from what we'd seen from his first couple of years at Blackburn. And then obviously he had sort of the success in the Copa America over the summer with Chile. So I think there was always a sort of expectation that he was going to be a big player for Blackburn this season. But I don't think anyone expected him to be quite as good as he has been. I mean, as you say, 19 goals already. That's more than he's scored in the rest of his club career combined. So that's just a huge example of how far he's come on during the past few months. And I mean, he's absolutely brimming with confidence now, which is something I've always thought has been key for him, and something that's been sort of lacking in those past few seasons. But he's found that momentum now, and he just looks unstoppable at the minute. And I mean, sort of the presence he brings as well, even when perhaps he's not scoring, he's always there. He's leading the line. He's making those sorts of runs. It's a huge lift that gives the Ewood Park crowd, obviously, with sort of the name and the notoriety he's gained. It's a massive sort of source of interest for Rovers, and it's just given them a big lift. And I think sort of the fact that he's playing that part in a team who are now, whisper it quietly, pushing for automatic promotion, just makes it all the more impressive, given they lost last season's top scorer Adam Armstrong, who had 28 in the league, and they didn't replace him over the summer. There was no other centre forward came in, so there was questions of how on earth are they going to get those goals, especially after they ended last season with what I think it was 5 wins in the last 20. So to step up like that and sort of oversee such an improvement from both an individual and a team perspective has just been so impressive from Brereton Diaz, and I think that's why he's just an absolute no-brainer for me, that to come from so far back to now be one of the biggest players in the Championship means he has to get this award for me.
Absolutely. I think, easy to forget, not just looking at him and the size of him, that he's still only 22 and obviously arrived in that fairly big money deal from Forest. And it seemed really in those early seasons at Ewood Park that the weight of expectation was weighing rather heavily on him. But he looks a completely different player this year, not least the way he's going about his football, that, there seems to constantly be a smile on his face. He sort of loves interacting with the opposition crowd. He'll do all that dirty work as well as some absolutely sort of bits of magic. And I think his confidence right now was sort of summed up by that sumptuous chip that kissed the top of the crossbar that nearly gave me his hat trick on Saturday. And it's his confidence, I think, has been infectious in the Blackburn squad. And I mentioned this yesterday with Alfie. I think, on the weekend review, I think it's that sort of infectious, confidence that's seen, the Blackburn back three taking the ball out, playing those wonderful balls forward, some fantastic interplay by Rovers, and obviously on a personal level, 19 goals, hugely impressive. But I think, as you said, stepping up with after Armstrong had gone, and I guess, people were probably thinking in the summer, who are they going to bring in to replace Armstrong, rather than Brereton Diaz is the man that can step up. And I think he's shown that really we should have been talking about him more. Harry's got in the comments and sort of backing what we're saying. Diaz has been phenomenal. So that's Ben Brereton Diaz as both of our surprise packages at the halfway point of the season. We move to the positional awards then, Toby, and we start at the back between the sticks. Who's your best goalkeeper at the halfway point of the season?
Yeah, I've sort of gone for what even I've got to say is a bit of an interesting one, perhaps. I've gone for Lee Nichols at Huddersfield. I was looking at the stats yesterday when I was sort of coming to make my decision on this one, and I sort of think there's only 4 keepers have made more saves than him in the league this season, and only 3 have kept more clean sheets. And none of those keepers have bettered him in both categories. So I think sort of that consistency for me just sort of stood out with him, that sort of reliability and that solidity that he's already providing to this Huddersfield defence. I mean, he's made some big saves as well for them. And I think as well what impresses me about that is obviously it came from MK Dons on the summer, maybe a bit of an unheralded signing. And this is sort of his first regular season as a number one at championship level. So the fact that he sort of stepped into that role and made it his own so naturally as well has just really sort of impressed me from his perspective. So that's why I've ended up going with Lee Nichols for my goalkeeper of the half season so far.
Certainly an impressive start to the season from Lee Nichols, as you say, and particularly impressive given, I guess he's a new arrival to the club, and a few more new arrivals in that defensive line as well. I just couldn't look past Sam Johnston for mine. I think it's perhaps the obvious choice, but there's a reason for that. I think he's head and shoulders above other goalkeepers in terms of ability at this level. Someone that should be playing in the Premier League, and I think will be next year. I don't think anyone disagrees with that, whether it's with West Brom or not. We'll see about that. Obviously, he plays behind a strong defence, but I think it's no surprise really that his side have got the best defensive record in the division, and he's got the most clean sheets with 11. I think he's a fantastic goalkeeper, and we're lucky in some ways to see a player of that quality, in my eyes, playing at championship level. If West Brom can keep hold of him, that'll be massive for them. But yeah, at the half-season point, I think a player that we all assumed, having shown last season that he could cut it at Premier League level, would go back there last summer. For me, over the first half of the season, has proven himself the best goalkeeper in the Championship. We move to the best defender category then, Toby. Who's your pick and why have you gone for him?
Yeah, I've sort of stuck with your West Brom theme that you've just brought us on to here, and I've gone for Kyle Bartley. Kyle Bartley, obviously, as you touched on there, it's been an extremely solid defence that we've seen from West Brom this season. Obviously, no side has conceded fewer goals in the league than the Baggies, and that's obviously with sort of the struggles we've sort of seen them have at the other end of the pitch. That's been absolutely key to keeping them in this promotion race at the minute, you feel. And Bartley's had a big part to play in that. I mean, he's only missed 1 league game so far this season, and he's just such a huge presence at the back for Valérien Ismail's side, I think. I mean, no player has averaged more aerial duels won per game than he has. And I mean, just his experience as well, and the sort of presence he provides. I think that's a huge factor for West Brom in sort of, as I say, keeping them in that battle for a spot back in the Premier League next season. So the fact that he's sort of doing that, I think maybe a bit under the radar. He perhaps doesn't get talked about as much as certain other members of this West Brom side do. So for sort of that reason, I think he deserves here to get that little bit of recognition for what is a really big contribution to the chances West Brom have of making a pretty swift return to the Premier League for next season.
Brilliant. Yeah, so Carl Bartley, your choice for the best defender in the Championship at the half-season point. And I'm actually staying at the Hawthorns for my pick. And that's Connor Townsend. I think for me, the 28-year-old, hugely underrated and has been so important for Valère and Ismail's side, not least because of his versatility. You know, they've had a fair few injuries, and whether it's a left centre-back or left wing-back or, you know, wherever he's playing in that defensive line, I think he offers so much to the Baggies, both defensively and in possession. I think when he's part of that back three, in my eyes, a lot of the time they're a better side in the way that he can bring that ball out from the back and his ability in possession and in distribution. I think all the things we've said there about the strength of Albion's defence ring true here for Townsend, a fantastic defender in my eyes, and someone having a brilliant season and someone that should really be hoping to return to the Premier League in the summer. From defence then into midfield, Toby, and you've picked a player that, you know, after a bit of an interrupted season last season has made himself impossible to ignore in 2020-21, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. That's John Swift at Reading. What an impact he's had for the Royals this season. I mean, 8 goals makes him the top scoring midfielder in the division. 9 assists. No players provided more in the division, and that all equates to obviously 17 goal involvements altogether, and that's out of 27 league goals for the Royals. So that's 63% of their goals he's had a direct involvement in. So that just shows you how important he is to their side at the minute. And I think, as you say, it was a bit of a stop-start season for him last year campaign, and you're never sure how a player is going to respond to that, whether they're going to hit the ground running again, whether they're going to take a bit of time to get up to speed, or whether they're just never going to be that sort of same player again, perhaps. But obviously, Swift has just come straight back into the groove, and it's been absolutely key for the Royals that he has done. And I think, as you say, it's probably no surprise now that there is sort of links emerging again with a Premier League move, but perhaps that might not happen. I think there's been maybe suggestions that he is open to staying beyond January, and that would be absolutely massive for Reading, given his influence on this side that I've sort of alluded to already, and especially when you consider the sort of other players that could be coming back into the side after injury in sort of January and beyond. If Swift can start linking up again with the likes of, say, Lucas Shaw, Jaria, then Reading can be a huge threat again. And I think obviously the circumstances mean that from an individual point of view, the club are perhaps now facing too big a task to sort of mount their own push on the top 6. But with that quality that sort of Swift and others can provide, they could still have a big say on the teams that are ultimately going to claim a playoff spot and potentially beyond in the rest of the campaign.
Certainly, and I think it speaks to his quality and his importance that we're here talking sort of about you know, Reading perhaps being a little bit unlucky given the points deduction to not be able to launch their own promotion push. When you've got to think, looking at where they are right now, you know, we'd be talking about them as significant relegation sort of candidates. Were it not for his goals, it's been a huge contribution. I've gone for a slightly different option for my sort of best midfielder. You know, hard to look past John Swift, as you say, but Fulham wide man Harry Wilson's my pick. I think he could have got the nod for best signing for me, but he slots in here in the best midfield category. You know, a player that just looked a cut above in the Championship for me. I think there was a lot of expectation on him, and I think fairly so, given he arrived in a big money move, and he's obviously thrived in the Championship before, but he's not disappointed for Fulham. I think it's 6 goals and 7 assists in 20 appearances for Marco Silva's side. And he's just been a constant threat and someone that I think, for me, deserves a little bit of credit for the phenomenal season that Aleksandar Mitrovic, who I'm sure is a player we'll talk a bit about later, is having. I think he's someone that constantly causes issues for opposition defenders. And if you were going to piece together a sort of a best Championships 11, he's someone that I think would be in sort of everyone's team. And for me, he's been the best the best player in the sort of midfield category at the half-season point. Well, that takes us then to our two final awards, the best Championship striker and best Championship player at the half-season point. And no surprises, I don't think, for anyone watching that we've both gone for Alexander Mitrovic for both here. So much has been said, Toby, about the Serbian already this season, but why has he claimed both these awards for you?
Just the form he's in. I mean, I think he had to be best player, and then obviously when you're talking about best player, you're covering all positions, so he couldn't not have also been best striker for me. But delving into why he gets those two awards, I mean, his return is just phenomenal. I mean, he's not going through the best patch at the minute, but neither are Fulham. Nevertheless, 22 goals still, as we touched on earlier, well out in front in the Golden Boot race. I mean, he only needs half of that tally to equal Ivan Toney's record from last season for the most goals scored in a single Championship campaign. So that shows you just how ruthless he's been. And I mean, touching on that, sort of perhaps bit more of a barren run he's on at the minute. I think any player is going to go through that. Any player, any club will. So that for me would not be a concern for him. And I think the other thing that impresses me with Mitrovic as well, that perhaps doesn't get mentioned maybe as much, is he's chipped in with 5 assists as well, which, I mean, it's not sort of prolific when you say compared to a Swift or whatever, but for a striker, that's really impressive. And particularly one who is such an instinctive target man as Mitrovic, he's one of them players you always expect to see popping up in the box, getting on the end of chances, and he does so really well. But the fact that he's willing to, sort of make them other contributions as well, instead of creating those opportunities for other players on top of that as well, I think just his all-round contribution to Fulham, you can see sort of how strongly connected with this club he is. And I just think the fact that he's stepping up and he's delivering on that every time he's in this division certainly means, he has to get that recognition for me as a best striker and best player so far this season.
Absolutely, I think I echo exactly your thoughts there, and I don't think anyone could really contest his position as, I suppose, the best striker and the best player. I think 22 goals and 5 assists in 22 Championship games, as you said, on course to score more than 40 this term at that rate, which is a frankly ridiculous return. And I think almost all the more impressive given it's the season after, I guess, another frustrating season where he couldn't quite, he couldn't quite do it in the Premier League. And even though, he's this bullish figure, almost Ibrahimovic-esque style, massive figure at the top of the pitch, you've got to think that the last season can't have been easy for him on a personal level, and yet he's bounced back this season and is on his and realistically, it's hard to see him not smashing the record and having arguably the best season that anyone's ever had at a Championship level. And I think it would be a surprise to me if we're not talking about Alexander Mitrovic as the best player and the best striker when we do the sort of full awards come the end of the season. Michael seems to be saying the same in the comments. He said had to be Mitro best player. Mitro is on fire. Well, that's everything from Football League World TV from us today. But join us tomorrow where we'll be revealing our half-season awards for League One. That leaves me just to serve a reminder and say, click the like button on YouTube and subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube. Thank you, Toby, and thanks everyone for watching.